minutes.
Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple minutes. Okay, everyone, we're gonna get started. So we're recording this live, but with a 30-second delay. To get it to view live with that delay, you need to click on the sort of the live button right next to the play button on this video. Otherwise, you would just view it in a recorded fashion. So yeah, I encourage you to press that live record button. So welcome everyone. We'll be presenting on graduate school entry success, and this is hosted by the National Graduate Committee. Just to give you an idea of the National Graduate Committee, we're a team of graduate students who are dedicated to enhancing the pipeline for undergrads going into graduate school, and then for graduate students wanting to go into academia or into industry. And so what you see here is the core NGC. So for any of those who going into grad school, if you're interested in becoming active in the National Grad Committee, that's an incentive.
So this is who's going to be presenting today. My name is Julian Preciado. I'm a PhD student at the University of Minnesota studying biomedical engineering. I did my undergrad in bioengineering at Oregon State University. As an undergrad, I did research using magnetic nanoparticles to image tumors. And as a graduate student, I'll be doing research in cancer cell metastasis.
Great. And my name is Edgar Peña. I'm a PhD student in biomedical engineering as well at University of Minnesota. As an undergrad, I majored in electrical engineering. And the research that I do now is making electrical devices to stimulate the brain for therapy. So as an overview, we'll first go into some of the basics of what it means to pursue a graduate degree. Then we're going to talk about how to become a complete package applicant. And then we'll have some question and answer section. Finally, we'll talk about the details of the graduate application, as well as providing some links to resources for you to apply. Now, a note about the question and answer sections. Because we have this 30-second delay, we're going to start off those sessions by answering questions that were submitted by people who RSVP'd in advance. But feel free to type in your questions throughout that session or throughout any of the sessions, any of the topics, and we'll answer them as we get them. Again, they're just going to be answered in a delayed fashion. Okay? And one final note about the presentation. This is a very, very big overview of the application process. It's meant to give people who are interested in grad school and interested in applying a primer and point you to resources where you can learn more. Any one of these topics could use up an entire discussion section, right? But at the very least, we'll equip you with the tools that you need to get started, okay? So first, what does it mean to pursue a graduate degree? Well, grad school is an experience where you advance your technical expertise to a much more in-depth level from the undergrad level. The reasons that you would want to pursue a graduate degree are really if you enjoy learning, if you have a passion for research, and if you want to discover new things and add to the body of knowledge for science and engineering. Getting a graduate degree provides you all these opportunities and also gives you proof of having a specialization. In addition, it opens doors in areas such as academia, national labs, and industry, where some of those careers practically require a master's or even a PhD.
So some of you may be wondering what the difference is between a master's and a PhD program. One of the main differences is that a master's program takes usually only 1 to 2 years to complete. Meanwhile, a PhD program will take 4 to 5 years. Master's program is typically only composed of coursework with an optional thesis or a practical project. Meanwhile, a PhD program will have the same requirements as a master's in matters of coursework, but there's a research component as well. In addition, the job opportunities after you finish a master's and a PhD will be completely different. So you also should consider what you want to do afterwards when you're determining whether you want to go into a master's or a PhD program. And also some programs such as the biomedical engineering doesn't require you to have a master's before going into PhD. So for example, Edgar and I, we went straight from an undergrad to a PhD program. So you don't have to go a master's along the way. Additionally, PhD programs are usually fully funded. That means that they will cover your whole tuition, and you'll also get a stipend around $25,000 to $30,000 a year to live on. Master's programs, there is some funding, but it's more limited, and you'll probably end up paying some out-of-pocket expenses.
Just to add a note on the application process to this, some of the differences you'll find in applying to master's and PhD is that the master's application tends to be a little less intensive than the PhD. They're often very, very similar, depending on the program. But sometimes you don't have to take the GRE for master's, or sometimes you do one less essay, things like that. There are some differences with respect to the application.
So now we're going to talk about what it takes to be a complete package when you apply, and this is going to be looking at what the graduate school is going to look at you as an overall applicant to see if they want you to come to their school. So one of the main things that they will look at is your GPA. That will show them that you've prepared yourself academically. As a graduate student, you'll have to take about 2 years worth of classes. So they will want you to also succeed in those classes. So the GPA will ensure them that you can academically do that. They will also be looking that you have done some research and presented and published if possible. That will ensure them that you'll be ready to conduct research at a top university. And they'll show them that you have the technical skills to be able to do research. You also need 3 or 4 letters of recommendation. So you're going to need good relationships with 3 professors. These are going to be relationships beyond just going to a class and then of 100 or more and then just asking the professor for a letter of recommendation. It's going to be 3 people that will have to get to know you pretty well, know your challenges, know your strengths, and be able to write about all your accomplishments so far. It will also be important that you have a leadership position or role. SHEP helps you with that. There's a lot of ways you can volunteer to be a leader through SHEP. They'll also be looking to see if you have been taken an internship or something like that. And then they'll also be looking to see that you actually have a strong desire to do graduate school and are aware of why you want to do graduate school and not simply because you don't know what you're going to do next year. So as an add-on, you do not, once you are applying to graduate school, you don't need to know specifically what professor you're gonna go work with, or what direction or what project specifically you want to do. But they want you to have at least a few professors in mind that meet your criteria that you want to work with, and also that you have a specific research area.
Elaborating a little bit more on the experiences. By far, for at least PhD programs, the research experience is the most important. Doing research demonstrates that you're ready to do what it is you're going to do in the graduate program. Again, most especially for PhD programs. Since the PhD program focuses on you doing research, you're able to show now proof that you've done it before and you know what you're getting into. That said, internships are also very, very useful experiences that will show that you are able to apply your knowledge to other contexts. So to show that you have versatile skills. Plus, you can get various developmental professional experiences through those internships, and it can help you hone your interests for graduate school. In addition, leadership. Many of you who are watching right now are probably heavily involved in SHIP. I highly encourage that you continue doing that, because your involvement is going to come in very, very handy when you are describing to the schools how you have developed as a leader, how you have developed in terms of diversity. It will immensely help you in the essays and also just to be successful once you're in graduate school and working with different people. And then another hugely beneficial experience for you is summer research programs. So for those of you who haven't heard of this, it is essentially an 8 to 10 week program where you often get to visit a different university and stay there for the entire duration. And you do research in another lab that is different from your school. And so the major benefits of this are, number one, you get research experience, which, as I mentioned, is key for applying to graduate school. You get a diversity of academic experiences, and you get a letter of recommendation from the advisor at the other institution. That's huge, because as we will talk about more, you'll need 3 letters, and as Juliana's already mentioned, you'll need 3 letters. So knocking one down for getting all these benefits is awesome. And of course, you get a stipend. Usually it's between $3,000 and $4,000 for the summer, on top of whatever housing and food they may provide. So it's a win-win situation. Within SHIP, there are also many opportunities for you to learn more about grad school. So we've given some of an overview, and we'll give more of an overview throughout this presentation. But to learn really the details of each of these aspects, if you're still a junior or sophomore or freshman, we recommend you go to the SHIP conference and attend things like the graduate prep track and the GEM grad lab, and as well as presenting your research at SHIP conference. These are really good developmental experiences, but they also actually teach you sort of the nitty gritty of what is grad school, and how do you become successful, sort of more in depth. And there are also graduate schools at the SHIP conference. So that's another benefit. You get to ask the specific programs that you're interested in more questions. So at this point, we're going to start taking questions, and we'll start by answering the questions that we got in advance. But if you have a question and you're watching right now, feel free to type it, and we'll answer it as soon as we get it, which is again delayed by 30 seconds. Okay.
The first question we got was, what's the difference between undergrad and graduate school? So far for me, I'm a first year graduate student, so there's not too big of a difference. The main difference is that right now I'm looking for an advisor to work with, which will typically be your first year or about. You'll rotate through different labs and just to see what whose lab you prefer the most, not just the research, but also the professor. So far I'm only taking classes, so far it's basically the same as an undergrad. The graduate school classes are not too much tougher. They're just a build on. But the one thing I do like about graduate school classes is that you get to you have a lot more freedom to choose basically what you want to look into. So you have more focus on your personal interests, not really just the program, what the program wants out of you.
Yeah, that's good. And as for me, I'm a second year, so I've already finished most of my coursework. So the difference for me in grad school is that it's really just about lab work and research. I come in most days and I don't have any classes. I go into the lab and I work on my project that I have. And this is how it works for the entire duration of the school year. And so it's really more, the focus is different. at that point. With respect to the classes that like Julian is taking mostly classes now, his classes are definitely much more focused and advanced than the classes he took as an undergrad. They're sort of geared to make him a high quality researcher in his area of interest. So the next question is, how do you prepare for the rigors of graduate study? This is kind of an interesting question. So, Julian, do you want to take that one?
Do you have something to?
Some of the grad classes are actually easier than undergrad classes in the sense that they're less focused on grades. So for grad school, typically the minimum to pass is a B minus. However, the curves for grad classes are much more, I guess, facilitated. It's easier to get a B minus as a grad student than it is as an undergrad. And that's because the professors don't emphasize the grade as much. They know that the goal of you being in the class is to learn the material, to apply it to your research. And so it's a kind of easier in that sense. But for some other classes, the material will just be so advanced that it'll just be difficult, and that will make it tough to get a B minus or whatever the passing threshold is. So for those, the only recommendation I would have for preparing is to just do your best to learn the fundamentals right now as an undergrad, because you'll get a tough. You'll probably have some really advanced material, but if you do well in your undergrad and you work hard and as a grad student, you'll most likely do well. Okay,
What's the next one?
oh, there's one more.
GRE.
Okay.
So the last one, I was just wanted us to talk about the GRE. We don't really mention it in most of the presentation, but it's basically a test you should probably take a month or two before you apply to graduate schools. Most graduate school deadlines are about mid-December to mid-January or February. So you want to do the GRE, the latest mid-November. That way, if you don't do as good, you can try again. But it's basically it has an analytical writing part, a math part, and basically a verbal reasoning part. For engineering programs, most of what they care about is basically the quantitative, so the math part. They want to make sure that you can do the basic. It's basically basic algebra and basic geometry. They want to make sure that you can do that. They care somewhat, but not as much about the writing part and the verbal reasoning. But it's very similar to the ACT or the SAT you took when entering school or your undergrad program.
Yeah, it's basically like the SAT Part 2 almost, but you do need to study. Definitely, there are prep books available that do a pretty good job of showing you what the test is going to be like.
But the GRE is not as heavily, or I feel it is not as heavily part of your when you apply. It is important, but it won't be something that will get you kicked out of graduate or not accepted if it's pretty bad. You have to have other insufficient things in order for you to not be accepted.
Good. Great. So let's move on to the next section.
Oh, okay. So now we're going to talk about how to prepare the graduate school application and the main components of it. So the first part that we wanted to cover here was the strong letters of recommendation that you're going to need. Preferably, you're going to need at least 3. You're going to need and these are going to be people that have gotten to know you pretty well. So one thing that will matter when you apply is that your undergraduate institution might play a role in your application process. That's just if it's an institution that's like pretty well known for that research area, or if it's not, that will matter. You should also in the application profile and in your personal statement be able to describe yourself in a way that shows that you know what graduate school is about, and then that you have a goal in mind in going to graduate school. You should be able to speak about what motivates you and professionally, meaning like why you want to research, why you want to spend 5 years of your life researching a particular thing. And in your statement of purpose, you need to make it you have to make yourself apart from the rest. You need to be able to show the admission committee that you are someone that excels above the rest, and that's going to be able to handle all the challenges that will arise in graduate school. So with regards to this statement of purpose, there's gonna be a component that describes your life experiences, and that's gonna be a big part of what's gonna set you apart from everyone else. Especially for all of you who are Hispanic or Latinos and have some type of, if it's immigration or language barrier or any type of barrier, this is where you get to present what makes you unique and what has been a challenge in your life that you've been able to overcome. Graduate schools will look into that. Special programs that seek to diversify their not only their graduate students but also their faculty one day. They will see for people who have had diverse life experiences. They will also look to see what qualifications you have had. So, for example, research or the classes you have taken. They will look to see that you're prepared yourself in those regards. They will also be looking to see that you're passionate about what you want to research. So you have to make sure that your statement of purpose has a lot of passionate words, and that it brings goosebumps when they read it. So, and then they will also want to make sure that your statement of purpose is showing that you're ready for graduate school and that you have some passion towards it.
In some applications, there's also the personal history statement, and this is important. It's an important distinction to make. Whenever you have both a personal statement and a statement of purpose in an application, you need to definitely emphasize slightly different things with them. So if you have both to fill out, then the statement of purpose is going to be more focused on what it is that you actually want to do at the institution. So how you became interested in the specific field based on your research interests or based on your research experience, and then what sort of professors you're interested in working with at the new institution. That's the statement of purpose. Whereas then the personal history statement is going to emphasize more your broader experiences, your leadership experiences, diversity. So there's going to be a slightly different focus whenever you have both separate. That said, in some institutions, you'll have a single essay to fill out, and then that will have to take into account everything, sort of your personal history and also what you intend to do at the university. So it really depends on the school and on the prompt. You'll have to just look at the prompt and verify based on that.
And on top of that, I wanted to mention that one of the most important things you can do when writing any type of statement, like personal history statement or a personal statement, is to be specific. So instead of being general and saying that you overcome some challenge or that you worked in a research lab doing some some general thing. It's good to be specific about whatever you overcame or whatever you research and what you're able to gain out of it. So by being specific, you'll show that you actually gain something deep out of it.
Yeah, very good point. So as a final note on this graduate application portion, definitely apply. You lose nothing in applying, and in many cases, you will be surprised where you can get in. So for many of you, who, especially if you have good numbers, you can get an application waiver. In that case, that even reduces the cost of applying down to just transcripts. And for some of you, that you can even get your transcripts for free in some institutions. So definitely apply. Apply to the institutions that you're interested in going to. The worst that can happen is they'll say no, and that's fine. You'll gain a lot from the reflection that you'll have to do to construct the essays and the responses. And so at the very least, you'll make yourself a better applicant for the other school that you applied to.
And on top of that, I wanted to also mention that there's a lot of there's a lot of fees involved with applying for graduate school. For example, the GRE alone, it's $200 to take. So one thing I would recommend is to financially plan ahead, especially as an undergrad. When I was applying, I did not have much money, so it was a little tough to plan how to apply for graduate school when I didn't have money. But thankfully, for every school I applied to, I asked them if they could give me, if I just either emailed them or found through their website if they had a fee waiver, an application fee waiver. So for the 8 schools that I applied to, I got a fee waiver for all 8, which saved me about $800 or so. So that's a big part if you want to save a lot of money too.
Right.
So to conclude, we're gonna show here are some resources that are useful when applying. So there's a lot of graduate visitation programs, and this is just a short list of some of the bigger programs across the nation. But these are just programs where you can apply, and then it'll be a good way for you to get to see the school and the program and really get to ask the professors at that in that institution some good questions and be able to get some good interaction. It'll be very helpful for you to narrow down your choices of what programs do you want to apply to or go to. And this is just a short list. There's a lot more available. Typically, after you apply and you are accepted, they will bring you to the university for like a recruitment weekend in mid-February. And they will basically wine and dine you to get you to come to their school, and that'll give you also another opportunity to get to know the program a little bit better. On top of that, there's also some fellowships available. As we mentioned, the PhD programs are typically are fully funded. So the advantage in applying before you come into an institution would be that in your application process, most applications ask you if you have applied or are applying for a fellowship, or if you have gotten one. So if you come in with your own money, that will be basically a program has really not much to lose by bringing you in, because you're basically a free graduate student. They don't really have to cover you or most of the expenses. So that would be something that will be towards your favor when you apply. Additionally, it's useful for master's students who are typically less funded. A lot of fellowships are for PhD students, but some of these are for master's students. And here's more fellowships. And there's a long list of fellowships. So
great. So at this point, this will be sort of the concluding part of the presentation, the final question and answer section. So again, we'll start with the questions that we have gotten in advance, but feel free to type in your questions and we can address them as we get them. So the first question here is, how do you find the right advisor? This question sort of gets at what happens once you're at the institution. That means once you're accepted and already in and trying to decide who you're going to work with. So in that sense, we didn't cover any of that. We're leaving that maybe potentially for the future or for any people who have questions. To answer this, one thing you can start doing as an undergrad applying to grad school is you can look at the faculty websites for people you might be interested in working with, and then look at their research. If it's something that may be of interest for you to work on, email them, or even better yet, you can email the graduate students. The graduate students will be more willing to tell you what it's like to work in the lab, and often are less busy than the advisor, or rather, at least more responsive than the advisor often. So it would be good to contact the grad students of those labs. Well, once you're in grad school, it's also about talking to the grad students, but there are various things that go into that decision, and we could have an entire sort of webinar or panel on how to choose the right advisor. So we'll leave that for any further questions.
So the next question is how to effectively research grad schools. So from personal experience, looking at the grad school websites is typically not enough. That's all I did. That's all I had to do, or I was able to do. But I would definitely try to, we showed a whole list of resources available, visitation programs, and that would be the best way to research, to really get to know the programs, because it's, for PhD students, it's going to be where you're going to spend 5 years of your life. So it's really good that if you get to visit, because you'll be able to really be able to see yourself in that city or in that college environment. For example, here in Minnesota, I didn't come during the winter, and it's probably going to be really miserable. And that would have been something good to know beforehand, but I figured it'd be bad. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's tough to really research the grad schools in advance when you don't know what you're researching. So there's the random approach, looking into websites, and then there's talking to other grad students, sort of even grad students at your own institution. If you were to say, ask me about what are grad programs in my field, in neuroengineering, I would know a few names. I would know a few schools to give you. Like in my case, I would give my University of Minnesota for my field, and University of Michigan, for example, and Stanford. Those would be schools doing research in my field. So if you ask a grad student who at your local institution what they recommend, they'll often at least have a few names in mind. They won't have all the answers, of course, but it's a good starting point.
And when you apply, you're probably going to want to have like a list of like the top schools in the country where you want to apply. So those are going to be like more of your long shots. You want to have like a list of like middle, like you're like a 50-50, and then a list of like for sure you were going to get into the schools. That way you have at least somewhere to go in case you don't get into your top choices.
Good strategy. Okay. The next question, another one that is sort of out of the scope of the presentation, but something that a good question to ask nonetheless. What happens beyond graduate school? This is a question that every grad student will have to think about really throughout the duration of the program, but most especially during the last few years. after grad school, you have various options. You can either go into industry, or in the case of PhD students, you can also go into national labs or into academia. Depending on the path you want to take, you take different steps to prepare while in graduate school, or you can take different steps. So if you want to go into academia and become a professor, the steps are essentially you pursue a postdoctoral fellowship. And so after you graduate, or before you graduate, you determine some professor in your field who you would work with to be almost their apprentice. Like you would be much more independent than a graduate student, but you would still be sort of working with sort of a new advisor in the field. That's where you're starting to become an independent researcher, so that you can apply to professorship positions, and then you'll be in charge of really your own lab and applying for money for your research. If you plan to go into industry after you graduate, then it's more, you have to network with companies. And so this is something important to do throughout your PhD, to seek out opportunities for companies hiring people with your skill set. And then there is no postdoc at that point. Or if you're a master's student, then then yeah, there's no postdoc after that. And then finally, there's national labs. This is a sort of an intermediate route between academia and industry, where you still be doing research, and it's still a heavy research component, but you're also not. It's not a private sort of company. It's like the structure in which you move up is more similar to academia. And so we can talk more about that as well if there are any more questions. But those are sort of some of the options that you have. And of course, there's also the option of starting your own business. Many people do this within engineering with advanced degrees. And so there are many options beyond that, but those are some of the ones that are specific to PhDs and masters. Okay, last question is, what is a typical day for a graduate student?
So, like I said before, for a typical day for me, it's very much like an undergrad, just because I'm right now only taking classes and then doing rotations. So, but basically, I just go to my classes, and then whenever the other graduate students in the lab I'm rotating in, or sometimes the undergrads are running experiments, I just go into lab and then just shadow them for a few hours, and then probably once a week or so, I will meet with the advisor and then just brainstorm some ideas, or just kind of like talk to him, just to get a deeper feel of what it would be like to work with them.
Yeah, that's good. So I think you should clarify, you're doing rotations right now, right? So
yeah, so rotations basically at the University of Minnesota, at least, there are 3-month rotations where you get put into a lab, and basically you're just there to get a feel of what the research and the lab environment is like, because they want to make sure, since you're going to be there for 5 years at least, that they want to make sure that you're going to be in a place where you'll be happy, and then everyone else is going to be happy with you being there. So they just want to make sure that it will work both ways.
yeah, and this is true of many institutions, but not all institutions. And so my typical day is similar to Julian's in some ways, in that I still have weekly meetings with the person I'm working with, and we talk about research ideas. The difference is that is my focus now. I go in every day to the lab and just sit down and work on the project, whether it's programming or whether it's writing up some description for a figure, or reading papers, or reading about a new mathematical technique in engineering. So this is sort of my day-to-day. And I also supervise undergraduates as well. that's a typical workday at least.
Yeah, so now we have a question from Victor. So he asked, if you go visit a professor at a university that you're interested in, how do you recommend preparing for this meeting? What type of questions should you have prepared? So the way you should, so you should definitely make sure that you have like a good understanding of what the researching is. And this would the easiest way to do this would be by going through their website, going through their faculty profile, and then not just that, but also look at any papers that they've published or that they're co-authors in. This will give you a good perspective of what is going on in the lab. That way, when you go in, you have like some good knowledge, and then you can have a good conversation with them, and it's not just them telling you what they do, because that will be a very one-sided conversation. And that way you can ask some really thoughtful questions about what exactly they're researching, and then this will show that you have like some deep thinking about the topic.
Yeah, those are very good points. And to add to that, think of it kind of like an interview, even though it wouldn't, the way you described it, Victor, it's not quite a formal interview, but most likely you can expect the professor is going to ask that you tell him a little bit about yourself. And at that point, you want to at least prepare some answer that says, what sort of research have you done, just briefly, and how, what you're interested in doing. And making that connection between what you've done and what you're interested in is always important. Even if you haven't done research in a field, you can always describe how you became interested, because there is always a story. It's just a matter of really thinking about what it is and then expressing it. And I would definitely make sure to come with at least, at the very least, five questions to ask this person, based on Julian's tips from earlier.
Yeah. And I would say also, if you have done previous research, make sure that you have a good understanding of what you did. Not that you just not that that you just went to lab and did all this, but have like a clear understanding that what the goal was and what you did contributed to that overall goal. And if you are and try to tie in what you did as an undergrad to what you want to do as a grad student, and if it's not in the same area, try to match the skills or whatever you learned as an undergrad in the lab to how that will help you as a grad student.
Yeah, great question, Victor. So that's all the questions we had written down prior from people who RSVP'd in advance. So if you have any more questions, feel free to type them up. Because of the delay, we may or may not get them. I mean, there's a 30-second delay. So because of that delay, we may or may not get them on time to answer them live. But at the very least, we can get back to you with answers. And just let us know. Other than that, thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out to us. We're here, the National Graduate Committee, NGC at ship.org. Yeah, thank you very much.